Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 108 of Into the Outer Realms. I've really come to love two things about this show, especially well. One is when we have our contributors, when we have our Red Thread Collective members, and we have a guest with us tonight who clicks both of those boxes, and that's, of course, Craig Ansell, a colleague that I respect. There's very few people that I respect more at this point in my career in my life than Craig. So I'm very grateful that he's with us tonight. We have another special guest with us too, very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic. We have a new opening tonight. As you know, the show's changed, the circumstances. You're going to see just me as the lead host, although I'll have lots of contributors, lots of conversations, really good guests, Red Thread Collective. So if you're a fan of the show, you may notice that I made just some subtle changes in images and added some images to the opening. So I'll tell you what, let's do that right now. Come back, get our guests on board, and we're going to talk about angels, demons, fact and fiction, and can they interact and affect human beings? All right, here we go.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right, so there it is, the new opening. Let's pop into the chat room where we got a bunch of stuff going on. Hello, Lori. Hello, Michael. Two of our contributors. Notice I put the contributors badge in the new opening. So happy to have you guys in that role. Ronald, who is the executive producer over at Earth Radio, where you can hear this show audio only, about 3 weeks behind now, on Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Hello, Angelina. Hello, Jessica. Hello, CL. Hello, Chassis. The gang is all here. You guys are in for a great night. Caribou, hello. Welcome, everyone. Oh, okay. Hello, Colette. So we're well represented. We have several countries here, and this is exciting. I just have sketches and highlights, and I have no idea what my two guests have been working on. Craig was the one. I'm going to be Craig on real quick. We're going to bring our other guests on soon, right after. Good evening.
Hey.
So welcome back.
Yes,
brother.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you here. You chose this topic.
Yes.
How come?
This is a long time thing from when I was young. It's just being devout, church going. I was always fascinated with the book of Revelations. It was just that was the one, because it was the one that was exciting. I mean, that was the one that had all the action, in it,
right on.
Per se, so yeah. It's just, and throughout, I mean, we'll get on it a little bit with the show too, but it was all about like cinema too. Ninth Gate, Constantine, all these movies, it just, you name it. If it has something to do, Last Days, Arnold Schwarzenegger, if it has something to do with these things, I am going to be, that's going to be the movie I watch. I go, because that I have a passion for that. And we'll talk a little bit about too. But I also, the book, This Present Darkness, I think
Yes.
that was the
I'm
one
halfway through, a little
Yeah.
more.
And I was actually shocked because I just mentioned it to you and you read it, and when you wrote back to me, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing the way he describes. And it's that type of thing, like what we'll get into tonight. Like I said, I don't want to bloviate forever here, but this, to this question, but that was why this thing has always been to me, is because whether you're religious or not, there's always been talk throughout history of a supernatural beings that have an influence upon you. And so in the modern church era, it's known as demons and angels.
Mm-hmm.
In the present form, most people picture it like the cherub, coming type angel, with the white wings, and then you got the dark menacing demon. Well, a lot of them, I don't know if you've got images or not, but that's one of those ones. Yeah, because if you see some of the depictions, they're not very pleasant to look at, of what some of the described, like an angel. And so it's like concentric rings with a giant eye, and but that's, for me, like I said, as we get into it, I'll especially chime in with that stuff. But that's where I got into it. I mean, this is my subject.
Let's bring the third member of the trio on. Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Coming to us from an undisclosed location, and for various reasons. I'm doing a show on April 27th, and maybe some of the contributors will like to join me. Contributors, consider this your invite, about gatekeepers, guardians, and clickbaiters, and what they're doing to the field, because it's substantial. And now when you express opinions, you get pushback on. So more and more people are either walking away, and some are choosing to carry forward, but to do so without broadcasting who they are. And that is absolutely fine. We're glad to have you with us. So you, maybe it was about a week after Craig said, yeah, we're going to do this. You said, yeah, I'm in. So what's your fascination, interest in angels and demons?
I've had a lifelong, I guess you would say that I'm an experiencer. So I've had a lot of like strange experiences my whole life. But I had to laugh when Craig mentioned movies. I watched The Exorcist when I was a little kid, and that messed me up so bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So bad.
Oh yeah.
But
and that wasn't probably, I don't know how old you are, but that's probably not even the extended edition with her walking down the stairs like a spider.
No, it's probably not that.
No, so have you ever seen that?
I don't know if I have. I won't watch those movies today still.
Oh, no. right on. No, but we definitely
Rosemary's Baby, all that kind of stuff. You keep them.
I mean, the Ninth Gate, to this day, I still use that line, mumbo jumbo, as he's coming into the Coven of Witches as they're doing their ritual, and he just starts, knocking stuff over. This is, it's like the epitome of just how the true study isn't anything like you see Hollywood. I mean, I thought that was encapsulated perfectly in that scene where it's just like, this is all show. It's like this is just pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. Even all ritual, right? There's a great expression. I really love it. It was taught to me by a mentor. Once your finger finds the moon, you no longer need your finger.
Mm-hmm.
So all of ritual kind of gets you there, or opens the door, opens a nice gate, if you will. But then once you open it and you're there, you can sort of leave the ritual behind, which is interesting, because I'm going to pose. Maybe I'll just pose a question to get us started, and then we'll just riff from there till we're out of time, or the audience has abandoned us, or however it goes. So my question is this: first an observation, then a question, guys. The observation is, I've been doing this work for 20-something years. There is so little difference between an angel and a demon when you get right down to it,
mm-hmm.
right? And fallen angels used to be light angels, or whatever you want to call them, heaven angels. Is that what you found too? They're almost indistinguishable, almost like humans. Good intent, bad intent are the differentiating factor. What do you guys think?
Well, like real quick, like for me, I think that one of the biggest differences, and you guys tell me if you don't agree, but I feel like angels announce their presence, demons don't.
Ah, right.
you know, because you'll hear whenever somebody has an encounter, whether it is there's that don't be afraid, you know, it's okay appearance, where demons are more like, hey, here I am. You know, they don't really, you know, you don't really, you know, nobody expects it until all of a sudden, bam, it's there. You know, it's just you feel it, and it's just that for me. That's, you know, for me, that's one of the biggest differences that I've found so far in the research.
Right, DA, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see much of a difference. I'm like you said, physically, I don't think there is much. It's more of an intent thing. But when you start looking through like some of the older like Gnostic writings and stuff, they're always depicted as the same.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
One of our audience members, Angelina, fittingly enough, says, I do agree. Angels do announce their presence and demons don't. They intrude in your presence. I'm going to give one little caveat to that. But who do you guys know? I meant to look it up and I didn't. Do you know who said the greatest thing that the devil managed to accomplish is to convince us that he doesn't exist?
Mm-hmm. I know that line. I'm not sure who that's actually attributed to.
Me either. If any of our scholars in the audience, and I don't mean that, I mean that with all sincerity. We have some very smart people in the audience. I think that's true. The one is shadow people, who are sort of a form of demon, perhaps, and they will announce Hat Man, who's a subset of shadow people. Very much lets people know they're there and what they're up to. Oh, the Warren said it. Really? Thank you, Craig. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I was going to say is too, because I know it's also used in The Usual Suspects.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm seeing it attributed to Charles Baudelaire.
Charles Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire. Baudelaire wrote The Flowers of Evil. He's a poet that I'm very, very interested in. They may have lifted it from Baudelaire. Let's keep digging on this, but that makes sense because he wrote The Flowers of Evil, the Fleur du Mal. I'll throw a little French out there tonight. Charles, hello. We got a great group with us tonight. Holy mackerel! I have felt and been protected by angels that I never saw, but I haven't seen a demon either. I have to cop to this, guys. I have. I've seen jinn. I've seen threatening black masses. I've seen shadow people. I've seen winged entities that meant us or others harm. Most of the audience knows that I have witnessed and spent a whole night praying with Tanya to prevent a possession that if it wasn't a demon, then it was some kind of evil witch spirit that was projecting and you know, Ronald says he thinks he has also. Have you guys ever experienced anything that you would term under this umbrella? I call them dark entities, right? Because we get out of the Christian into the more secular, Craig, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. We call them angels and demons. That's very Christian. It's very Catholic. Have you ever experienced anything that you would term a dark entity, a non-corporeal entity that meant you harm or someone harm?
I'll let Advocate go first there.
I've had many experiences. Like my house was built in 1886, so when I moved in, it was haunted. But it was like weird things, like I would hear footsteps, that kind of stuff. But this thing that hit me the strangest was my dog. He was always glued to my side, but when I walked through it's an old farmhouse, so every room is a box with a door. When I would walk through the kitchen, he would stop at the door and stare at the ceiling and just whine. And it was the weirdest thing. I would literally have to grab him by his collar and drag him into another room. And one day I said, like out loud, I'm a crazy person to begin with, but out loud I say, I don't know who you are or what the F you're doing here, but I'm not going anywhere. We mean you no harm. If you leave my dog alone, you can stay. But if you keep messing with my dog, I'm going to have to get rid of you. And it was so strange. It never happened again after that. My dog never stopped at that, to stare at the ceiling or anything like that. But before that, I would see, I guess you would call them shadow people. Mm-hmm. I'd see like dark shadows or masses. You'd get that cold feeling. And I've had a couple more, but they're a little bit longer stories to get into. But
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I've seen some. I've told the story before on air about seeing what looked like a small shadowy figure, and then duck away. I've seen that, but I never felt anything, ominous about that. I did have an experience, which, for all I can, angel, an angelic thing, where I was staying at a friend's house, and you could say, it was just a trick of the moonlight, whatever night. But looking at the door, it looked like easily like 7 feet tall, and looked like the silhouette of a figure standing there. And so, I don't have proof, like, it didn't say anything. It didn't, it don't have anything cool to add, on top of that. Like, it touched me and all of a sudden I had this revelation. It's like, no. But I that's the closest thing I've had to it. And who knows, maybe that's what started me with this passion, for, to where I love the subject.
Wasn't it amazing how many people in the audience have seen angels or seen demons? Tanya and I, when I go out in the field, I wear my St. Michael's medal, which normally stays in my room on top of a piece of tourmaline by my bed, black tourmaline. Also, our room is warded. I have salt with angel sigils in an iron skillet under the bed. I have iron railroad spikes and thick bolts from the railroad all around the room, because that's where we tend to be most vulnerable. We keep our mirror covered.
So you're safe from vampires too, it sounds like.
Well, nothing in a very, very long time. I guess no garlic in the bedroom, though.
No.
Although I'm Sicilian, so
I was gonna say, was that an Italian joke?
With me wherever.
Yeah, you got enough on your breath, I'm sure, brother.
Yeah, coming out through the pores. But I'm growing my own this year. That's a sidelight. I'm very excited. My 19 plants made it through the winter.
Awesome.
And they're doing better than my neighbor's, who's a master gardener. So I'm pretty excited. But okay, so yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Vampires, shadow people, hat people, culturally specific things like the Titsameme that Tanya and myself, a Toltec shaman, and a few other people, maybe some of them who are in the chat room tonight, worked on exorcising from someone. This is interesting. Titsameme is, Craig, it's very much like Frank Peretti's descriptions of these things.
Yep.
They're somewhere between a golem and some kind of undernourished child, kind of black and shrivelly. But this is interesting, guys. It was many lifetimes this thing had been in this woman's energy field. So every time she reincarnated, it was there in her energy field. And this thing looked like somewhere between Jabba the Hutt and it was a big, black, wrinkly. Oh, it's nasty. It was totally nasty because it had been feeding on her energy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Yeah. The Titsameme is something that I had written about, and I didn't even realize it until recently. And there's a certain kind of plant, I think it's a gardenia, that you use to ward against them. We didn't know that, but we happened to have gardenias in proximity to where we were working with this woman. The gardenias died. They died over the course of the really intense. Yeah. So, black masses,
and you guys
in the Jewish culture.
You did an exorcism on this woman, you said?
No. I may have used the word. It wasn't an exorcism like holy water and more of an exorcism in the general idea of there were 4 or 5 people who were working on getting this thing out of this woman. A few of them were remote. One was in Mexico, and it was done through visualizations, guided meditations. No kind of it wasn't. We didn't use the Rituale Romanum. Wasn't sanctioned by the Catholic Church. There was no in the bed with holy water and crosses. Thank you, Chad. It was exercising in the sense of removing a foreign dangerous spirit from somebody's body or field, which leads to a question. Do you guys believe in possession?
Yes.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Yeah.
as much as you want.
I mean, yeah, I'm just going to go. For me, it's simple. Yes. It's one of those, I don't know if it's so much for me as literal, like the Catholic thing, you know, where just, because I've always been a firm believer that you can't just be walking down the street and smack you're possessed.
Right.
So I don't know if I necessarily buy, like when, you know, have somebody come in to the priest and say, my kid has been possessed. You know, I think there's something that happened, you know, there's something that the person was involved in that occurred. But yeah, there's been enough for anybody that really gets in the conspiracy side. There's so many things that the Vatican hides. And this is something that they hide, but they don't hide the fact that they do it.
Right.
And so that to me leads a lot of validation that this is something that does exist, because like if the Vatican doesn't want, you know, the Vatican can control it, they can. And if they can't, they control the narrative. And this is one that they're trying to control the narrative of. They don't allow the videotapes, you know, get smuggled out every now and then, but you don't see the actual visual, but you hear all the stories.
Yeah, DA, before you chime in, just real quick, John Paul II did over 200 exorcisms personally. And I think it was probably 4 years ago, the church trained over 2,000 exorcists.
Yeah,
so the church certainly believes in it. Go ahead, DA.
I think there's also a lot of stories of inanimate objects being possessed as well. I have a friend who moved into an apartment, and this old woman gave her a plant. And the stories that ensued after that were bone chilling. Like, she had 2 kids, and she didn't figure out it was the plant right away. But there was like writing showing up on her wall, and she called me one day and was like, hey, how do I get rid of these things, or what do I do? And, you know, I told her the whole salt things and all those other things you hear about. She tried salt and banishing them from the house. And when she did so, all the light bulbs in her entire house blew up.
Wow.
But it got to the point where her son, they kept saying that they saw a spirit in his closet, and it was a younger male with like pegged jeans, white t-shirt with blood on it. And what ended up happening, like where they reached their breaking point, is the kid swore that this thing was strangling him, like woke up screaming, and he had physical marks on his neck, like that he was being strangled. And they left the house, and she tried calling in priests, and a lot of people wanted nothing to do with it, to be honest. But she ended up, like, she got rid of this plant that this old woman gave her, and it seemed to make everything go away. Wow. Strangest thing that I've ever heard personally. Like, but yeah, it was strange.
Yeah. So if you know, if those gardenias died while we were trying to extract this titsameme from this woman's solar plexus from her energy field, then plants can carry these things. Craig Sahaka asked, what's in the Vatican tunnels? That is the question. Well, little commercial, guys, forgive me, but it's my show. So when Cannon and the Quill 4 comes out in October, you will find out exactly what is underneath the Vatican tunnels, because I just wrote it last week. There's a secret group that meets there. And that's probably not that far from the truth. It's underneath the secret archives, which really aren't that secret. But very good. So, I mean,
while we're kind of on the topic of Vatican, that was that's kind of where I focused a lot of stuff on. And they've been finding, you know, as they do these books, I mean, as they uncover these, basically, for anybody that's seen some images, there's places where it's just piles of papers, just piled. They're not even, it's not even organized. They're slowly going through these things. And I honestly feel we're going to start getting, if, you know, as they get through these things, you know, when they're going to, you're going to start getting some more information about the records that they have of these entities that they've encountered.
But do you think they'll share those with us? Or it seems to me that their history has been to more manipulate man and keep that stuff to themselves, because that all holds power that they don't want us to have, in my opinion.
Yeah, that could be, because like I said, I could see them releasing like names and like, in, you know, some of these things, but not the information like this is how we subdued this one, that, you know, not those specifics, but you might get actual, just like your Wikipedia style information that comes out, but not actual details.
Isn't there also a school of thought that believes that angels and demons are both parts of our psyche and not actual, so they're like energetic things inside of us? So I also wonder how many things get blamed on demons doing them when it's just people's messed up heads too.
Literally the cartoons.
Right. And I really,
Yeah.
call it my X-Files theorem. It's a little bit of everything. I mean, that's what we've learned in the field. That's what I've learned in my studies. I think we get into danger where it's like their psyche, so that's what they are. Because that's what I feel like with the archangels, which I write about a ton. And Tanya, St. Michael is her go-to. And she's even had Metatron show up, which is very powerful. I kind of think they're archetypes that are so powerful. And I also think when you call on light beings, they'll answer. Just like if you call on dark things or you put a call out without warning and undifferentiated, someone will answer. You're in a bad neighborhood, you throw open the window at 2 a.m. and you yell out, someone's going to answer. But are you going to want to have them over for a beer? I don't think so. So I think that it could be that too. It's a little bit maybe chicken and horse, but chicken and egg, chicken and horse. That's bizarre.
Right.
Let's stay on possession for now. And thank you to our audience for these comments. People know exorcists. CL says they keep it on the down low. I think they certainly don't brag about it. Craig, you've had not from the Catholic Church, but you've had an exorcist on the show. His name escapes me.
Oh God, you'd think that I would...
Sorry, while you're thinking of that, let me just say, you said someone doesn't go and immediately get possessed. So there are really 4 levels of hauntings, and the 4th being the possession. So the first is manifestation. That's where we want to catch it early. You're noticing something's happening, something's not right. Then it goes to infestation, where this is a regular thing. It's starting to affect you. Then it goes to oppression. If oppression goes unchecked long enough, they can get in, and that becomes possession. So you remember his name?
We've had 2. Timothy Shaw.
Right.
And no, Timothy Earl. Sorry, Timothy Earl.
Right.
It was demonology and exorcism as we did on that one. And then also Reverend Sean Whittington.
Right, Sean Whittington, right.
Yeah, so we've had those 2 to talk about it.
Yeah. So Jessica says, here we go. Let's stay with this. And then I want to branch off of this into serial killers. Read a book recently that took the angle that possession is only possible with consent. Now, Craig, this was the larger thing that you were really into, right? Can they control humanity? So you want to take a shot at this?
Yeah, no, I agree with. I agree with that premise. That's always been where I've held that. I just, without repeating it all the time, it's like I really truly feel that there has to be some opening of yourself to this attachment, that they can come in and through, like Constantine, they can go through like the influence, they can kind of nudge, but they can't actually like puppet, attach unless you do something to welcome it in, like open yourself to this. We've talked paranormal investigations. When they say, use my energy, you were welcoming something into you. At that point, yeah, you could get possessed. I mean, it just, whatever the entity is, so I think at that point, you have to really guard yourself on that one. But yeah, it's from the longest time. I mean, I believe that if you walk around, like if I was going to invest, I have no fear of getting possessed, because at no point am I going to say, hey, come on inside.
Right.
Yeah, so it's.
I think I'm going to put a little caveat on that before I pass it over to DA, just because of our field experience. I think alcohol and drug use will weaken you. There was a guy when Tanya and I were on Coast to Coast AM. Speaking of which, I didn't type this, so we may have a special guest in the room. Hold on. Sorry. My concentration got pulled. DA, go ahead. Let me collect my thoughts on this.
Oh, when I was, just trying to brush up on some things for the show, I started looking into more demons, which I'm not terribly familiar with, not in a historical realm anyway. but I found some of the works of Solomon, like the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Red Dragon Grimoire and all that. And I didn't really didn't know that King Solomon harnessed demons to build the Temple of Solomon, which was kind of shocking to me. So I'm in my studio, reading all this, and I think just that alone opened up something in my psyche. Like, it was creepy for like 2 days. I didn't want anything to do with reading about demons. Like, something freaked me out. But like when I went outside to go in the house that night, you could just feel stuff around you. Like I'd say I'm kind of sensitive, but it really freaked me out. Yeah.
There you go. I write about this. I write about this quite a bit. Yes, he harnessed Iblis using a ring, basically, of a pentagram. I believe it was brass and copper.
Wasn't it 72 demons? Didn't he harness 72 demons to build the
Yes, but Iblis was there. He was sort of the foreman on the job, if you will. But the Queen Bilquis, the Queen of Sheba, was rumored to be half jinn. Of course, their son, Meladuk, something like that, supposedly was the one who took the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting lore that the king of the king of Israel, Solomon the Wise, would harness, but I think it had to do with Bilquis. When she showed up, she was half jinn. Hey, I know people. You could take like forever to build this temple. I know a guy. It feels very New Jersey, New York kind of construction thing. I know a guy, and you bring him in, and he'll bring his guys. And if you give him a little graft, I joke, but I write about this a lot. Iblis is huge. I don't want to give anything away in my books, but Iblis is a key player, but you don't know that he's doing it. It is unsettling. And I will say, when it comes to the jinn, and CL pointed this out about a month and a half ago, not that I didn't know it, but I was going too fast. There are good jinn. There are Robin Williams, Aladdin jinn, although you need to be careful about what you wish for, obviously. But jinn they're all over the Quran. We were on Coast to Coast AM, and a couple of things came out of that. The thing that slipped my mind, a guy wrote to us, and he lived in a town where we used to live. And he said, look, man, me and my friends, we were in the Navy, we were Marines, we were over at Cherry Point and down in the Marine base Camp Lejeune. But we were using drugs, we were drinking, and a friend of mine got possessed, and he pulled over one night. I was in the car, and he killed 2 people. Now, I had to do my due diligence. He's writing me from prison after we appear on Coast to Coast. I did my due diligence, and I feel that there's enough evidence that there was a history with these people that maybe he's not copying to. But alcohol, drugs, in native and all ritual, if women are on their moon, if you're drinking, if you're using drugs, you don't do ceremony, you don't do sweat lodge, you don't do other things.
Well, that would depend on the drug.
Well, I'm talking drugs in the sense of recreation. I'm not talking about sacred mushrooms and things like that. Right. But if you're showing up shooting heroin, they're not going to let you into sweat lodge because it weakens your field and it makes you vulnerable. So, Craig, let me ask you: when you say consent, or our audience, when you say consent, it's not explicit consent. Like, here I am, I open myself up to you, Satan, like, the rumors of, but it's a more of a letting down your guard, calling something in. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, because consent can take all different ways. It could be simple as in like, oh, hail Satan, please come inside and take me. It could be that form. It could be simple as use my energy in this investigation. It could be the simple thing of you put yourself in a compromised position. Like I said, heavily drug use, drinking, it puts you in a weakened state to where it's easy for something to pry, and you can go, oh, that feels, keep more. And then that's consent. The adage of the vampires, welcome them in. They can't come in until you say, come inside. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're now prey.
Absolutely. I just want to, here, Angelina had said, I'm going to put this back up here. I was told that priests are being trained in exorcism because more people are getting involved in occult rituals, drawing demons in. I think it's not, I mean, definitely there is that. And it's a weird thing with, it's my book that is going to come out. I promise you guys. Just a lot of things took over, parallels and patterns, which Craig is going to write the forward for. And the first draft is done. I've just had to put it aside for some reasons. I did a lot of study about this idea, like, are all these satanic cults? I lived in a town in North Jersey where I was a kid, where you went down the old railroad tracks, and supposedly people were sacrificed by a satanic cult. And there were a couple of kids that were killed when I was in school, kids who were brothers or sisters of, and it happened again in high school when I was down the Jersey Shore. The FBI says it's all bunk. We don't have this, but they do have specialists. I think there are people that dabble in witchcraft too. And Craig, you and I have had some bad experiences and know people close to us from dabblers who can't control what they're calling in.
And I don't know if there is one or not, but I almost think that maybe this is something that you could work on too in your free time, like a Hynek scale for these things. Because when you do these things, because I truly think, like, we've talked about serial killers, we talk about these things. When people say, like, they're Satan worshipers, I honestly don't think that every single person that says, I believe in Satan, is one that is communicating with the Dark Lord. I think it's just like anything. It's like there's the people that, actually, they just they like it. Like, they have a book on their shelf and they like it. There's the people that actually read it and study it. Then there's the people that actually start to practice it. Right. Then you start getting into the devotee. You get these people that actually live this mantra, and they do these things. I think those are the people that are more, when you see these satanic sacrifices, those are the ones that are more. I think the other ones are basically a bunch of people that just got stoned out of their mind, ended up killing a chicken, and wrote a bunch of symbols that they found online. And I don't really think that they summoned the Dark Lord. I think they literally thought they were, because they were high as hell.
Yeah.
I do think in the 80s, which is probably what Joey was talking about, there was what they call it, the satanic panic. Absolutely. It was like everywhere. Oh my God, there's devil worship.
Everybody's Satan. It's in all the music.
I do think there is. Yeah, heavy metal will make you do that, right?
Yep.
I do think there are people who believe all that stuff. Obviously, like you have the Aleister Crowleys and that whole realm, the do as thou wilt, right? But I also think, like you said, I do think there are some people who just not find the humor in it, but just more messing around. And I think those are the ones who get in trouble. They don't understand what they're doing as far as protecting themselves, and they find some ritual online or in a book, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to call up the devil." And I think that's where people get in trouble. Personally.
Yeah. I do think, and there was a rash of it in the 60s and in the 80s, and we've kind of slowed down with it a little. I'll contextualize this, but being a Catholic, I really had a problem with Ratzenberger, right? Who was sort of put out to pasture. Francis replaced him. He was the guardian of the faith. He did say one thing that I agreed with. Ratzenberger said all these movies that are made about these things, right? And Hammer did it in the 60s. The Devil Rides Out and Satan this and Satan that. Rosemary's Baby. In the 80s, you had the prophecy movies. You have Omen. You have Exorcist. In the 90s, you have Devil's Advocate. You have Constantine. End of Days. Yep. With Gabriel Byrne. Love that one. He's up to some nasty, nasty stuff. He's pretty terrific. And I love the prophecy movies too. But I kind of agree with that. When it's so culturally everywhere, people get drawn. It's the same danger that's happening with Paranormal Investigation, where these kids buy a bunch of equipment online on Amazon because they watch the TV shows, and then they get themselves in trouble. They're breaking and entering, they're disturbing spirits, and sometimes they're when they're calling out. It worked out really well for DA when he said, leave my dog alone, leave us alone. I don't know who the F you are. It all really depends on your tone and your intent with that stuff. It can drive them up. So Tanya and I always teach, be real careful with that. And you did it right, and it worked out great for you. But you watch these movies and wouldn't it be fun? Like Bloody Mary, right? Bloody Mary's one of those things.
Mhm.
And then there's this bridge in Pennsylvania. It's the one where you say something about the baby, and supposedly the woman appears with her dead baby or something.
Oh yeah.
And people were into it. They were like, "Hey, after the conference, let's drive down to that bridge and let's like say the thing." And one is probably just a urban legend. And two, if it's real, do I really want to torment this woman that was so tormented that she jumped off the bridge and killed she and her baby? No, I don't.
You were talking about movies. How do you feel about Kubrick and like Eyes Wide Shut and that whole?
Oh, that was a he peeled back the curtain.
Yeah, I agree.
So
That
I mean, there
wasn't-
are people who firmly believe all of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut. You know, it's that is definitely showing what goes on. You know, without sounding like Alex Jones. You know, that's the globalist. You know, thing.
Right.
You know, it's when you see those kind of movies.
Oh, Laurie saw. Did you have an audience with him, or was he speaking, Laurie? Also, CL is schooling you guys a little. Crowley was a Thelemic, not so much satanic. Although he was called the Beast, but his mom called him the Beast because after his dad died, he started acting out. He had some interesting experiences with what could be called alien greys, right? Lamb. But yeah, so thank you for that.
Didn't he also have a role with? Wasn't he friends with L. Ron Hubbard and helps do something with Scientology as well?
Well, almost. See, okay, so here's how I know it. This is very interesting.
And I didn't mean to sidetrack you, by the way.
No, it's really not, because you're calling in dark entities and you're doing the Amantra workings and the Babylon workings and all that. So Jack Parsons, who was a rocket fuel scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, who had the moniker Antichrist Superstar, he broke off from Crowley, I think. And he and L. Ron Hubbard were pals. Now, L. Ron Hubbard is this, we could get in trouble for this, I don't even care, but Liam Romini did the whole special on Scientology. So the way I understand it is that L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer, and he wasn't doing that hot because his books weren't that great. So he made a bet with someone in a town called Bay Head, New Jersey. Now, I grew up in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, which is right across the bridge from Bay Head, and I spent a ton of time there. But he made a bet with someone that he could invent a religion. And that's how Scientology came to be. But there's a whole, there's a whole crazy UFO thing. So you want to talk about that overlap with entities that they don't talk about. Like the people who head up Scientology will get up and walk out of the room if an interviewer asks them about that kind of thing.
And was it you or Craig who recently did a show on, was it UFOs in the Bible?
Yep. That was,
so I think all of that plays into this as well. Or could play into it. Are they metaphysical? Right. Are they extraterrestrial? That's extra dimensional?
I think that's a good, really good segue too, to that part, for the conversation, because I've always held that one too. It's just like in the ancients, like what we see nowadays, how would you describe something when you see, like in the Bible, when they describe these things, like we did in the UFOs in the Bible, how would you describe something? Like if you saw something from the future that just showed up and it's technology we've never seen before, you could only refer to it as a jet aircraft, as a car. You have to go with what you know, because you can't make up something. So you see these beings, we don't know if it was extraterrestrial visitor that showed up, the Anunnaki. I mean, you can go through all these different things. You don't know what it is. All we know is that we have these descriptions of the watchers, of these visitors that have come through, signaling like Sodom and Gomorrah, saying, get out, pulling these things out, which is attested to a survey. When you see the way it's described, it doesn't specifically say angel. It refers to another person. But like we said in the beginning of the show, it's come to be in the current version of Christ, the strict angels and demons. This is what it is. But when you actually boil it down, they have different meanings. But that's where that discussion comes in. Are they from a different reality, different dimension? Is this something from here? Is it from our plane? Where are these coming from? And that's a discussion that I love talking about all the time.
A friend of mine today on Facebook posed the question. He's like, do you find it strange that all the spiritual stuff, like isn't there more spiritual stuff taking place today as it did in the times like biblical times? And my argument to that was it probably is. Like, I think it happens to more people than you know, but I think society is so polarized, and they either want to make you crazy or a conspiracy theorist if you share
Mhm.
these things. So I think they
Right.
happen, but most people keep them close to their chest.
Right.
But again, like what you said, if you saw any of those things that you didn't, also back in that time, if the wind blew in a different direction, it was a miracle, or it rained when it wasn't supposed to. So there's a lot of that as well. But
Yeah.
Right. Agree. And I think a lot of things like raising the dead was part of a ritual, probably having to do with the Essenes, and it got lost in the translation, or it was corrupted in order to make a point or use it. Right. Jesus rising from the dead. That's Osiris. We could do a whole show on that.
Oh, yeah.
Lori says here, I got to get Reverend Carter's book about aliens in the Bible. I
Absolutely.
just posted last week a review of Alien Scriptures, and I'm very proud to say that April 7th, Reverend Carter's going to be with us to talk about that book. So
Nice.
turn on for that. And this whole, like what you're talking about, DA, this gatekeepers and guardians things, people are still really afraid, and there's a huge effort being made to silence people. Tanya and I don't talk about it. I'll talk about it very briefly without the details, but we were sorely disappointed. We were invited into something that we spent 6 months working on, and all of the everything went to the PhDs and MDs. So it's very much definitely you can see the Reverend Carter interview, folks, and you can watch the one from a couple months ago. Tanya and I had him on for 90 minutes. We had to go because the 90 minutes were up. It's the longest show we ever did, 93 minutes. He's amazing. Craig, you've had him on your show twice.
Yep. Yeah. We talked about the book as well, and they said you definitely get that book.
Yeah.
That book's fantastic.
Michael says, I'd love to figure out the secrets of the necromancy. Yeah, as long as we go carefully, I think we can do all this stuff. Hey, my brother's joining the show. Literally my brother.
Nice.
Hello, brother, blood brother, from Michigan. So I just want to go back to the possession. There's only serial killers is another huge fascination of mine. And I'm writing a book on Jack the Ripper right now. So before we came on air, I was reading about another crazy artist who might have been possessed by the devil, Richard Dadd. DA, you're an artist. I don't know if you know Richard Dadd, but fascinating. 1840s. Slit his father's throat with a knife after being in Egypt and thinking that Osiris had chosen him to battle the devil. So it fits. It's all a piece. There's only one serial killer who I believe was possessed by the devil, and there's one who claimed, he wasn't a serial killer. He was a mass murderer, who I believe was lying. And I'm going to share those two now.
Which one is Son of Sam?
I think that Son of Sam was crazy hearing voices. And this is, again, we don't know. They don't even know, maybe. But the one who I think was possessed by some kind of devil demon was Richard Ramirez.
Oh.
The Night Stalker. If you look at some pictures of him, if you look at footage of him, it ain't him sometimes. Plus, he spent a lot of time at the Cecil Hotel, right, where that girl wound up in the water tank. And I still don't believe the explanations for how that girl wound up in that water tank. I don't believe any of the explanations for that. Something weird happens at the Cecil Hotel. Richard Ramirez was a very damaged guy, and I think he was open to these dark things, and he brought them in. The one who I think, and I've talked about this before, is Ronnie DeFeo, who Amityville killed his family. Mm-hmm. This book is excellent, folks. Craig Sahak, if you're still with us, this is a book I highly recommend by Rick Osuna, The Night the DeFeos Died. This has a very alternate explanation. Mr. DeFeo was highly, highly abusive. Now, this does play into when you're highly abusive, you break people down and you make them more vulnerable to things getting inside of them. That certainly does happen. But he was so horrific to Ronnie and the oldest sister, and I think there were 5 or 6 kids, Mr. DeFeo was disposing for bodies for the mob in Sussex County, New York. It was this whole thing. They decide they're going to kill them. And they go there that night. And the plan was to kill dad, kill mom, who never did anything about it or protected any of them. The daughter had been kicked out. Ronnie had been kicked out. They come back, and they're going to make it look like a home invasion, home robbery. That's the plan. But the sister so hated her younger sister for favoritism that she went in and killed her. And then Ronnie was like, what do we do now? We got to kill the whole family. And then they kill the whole family, which doesn't look like a home invasion. So he comes up with this thing, which then the Warrens and Jay Ansel, I believe is his name, unless I'm just getting confused. Jay Anson wrote the Amityville Horror. And the lore is that they worked it all out with the Lutzes over a bottle of wine. The Warrens, the Lutzes, and Jay Anson. So I'm just putting that out there. But this book is fascinating. If you're into it. So this is a guy who I think also too, The Devil Made Me Do It. Do you see the Blumhouse movie? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
I think that's a common, it's almost like a cop out.
Yeah. It's a convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's and that's one of those things that's always a mystery. Like when we do, when we talk about serial killers, it's like just how many of them, truly are influenced, or how many have used that as a way of gaining an excuse, like a sympathy. So that way you take mercy upon them right there to where they can keep doing what they want to do.
Right.
I wonder, have any of the Catholic kitty diddlers used that as an excuse? Like, are you aware of that?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, man. I have not, but we don't hear from them very often. Think about it.
We hear excuses, but
right?
I haven't heard that one.
We hear that they've been moved to other dioceses, or they've finally been defrocked when it gets heavy enough. But there aren't too many. I believe there's that great movie with Michael Keaton about the Boston Globe. It's wonderful. I think it may have won an Oscar or some Oscars, where they broke the story. And I think they did interview some of the priests, but there was none of that. I grew up in the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is very Jekyll and Hyde. And that's the biggest problem I have with it. So we transmogrify the bread into the body, wine into blood. All of a sudden, it's capophagy, it's vampirism.
Spotlight.
Yeah, Spotlight, exactly. Highly recommended, folks, if you're interested in this thing. There's also a very good book called The Vatican's Closet. Highly recommended to me. It's on my reading list about all of that. And it may say in there, but the Catholic Church doesn't, they question people who have visions. People used to get excommunicated. Gnosis is very, very frowned upon. And yet you have the stigmata. You have bilocation with Padre Pio. You have wounds that smell like roses. Saint Teresa of Avila and all of that kind of stuff. Hagiography is really interesting. So I don't think the Catholic Church and all its schizophrenic madness allows for demonic possession of priests.
I think if you got down into like maybe the original teachings and stuff, you could probably find that. But I think Catholicism, like a lot of other religions, has become bastardized, so to speak, over the years, and used as a way to control man. And you were talking about gatekeepers. I think they're probably one of the biggest gatekeepers.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. And that's why I say Ratzenberger was the guardian of the faith. And what do people like that know? And what secrets are they hiding? And what do they have? And let's remember, I have it written down somewhere because I'm working it into one of my books. There was an agreement between Nazi Germany and the Vatican.
Yep.
Which from a pragmatic, totally, Craig knows where I'm going with this. There was common ground there, but it's still horrific. It's still absolutely horrific that arguably one of the largest religious organizations in the world at that time backed the Nazis for any reason. Because it's certainly, that's very, very Old Testament. Brutalize your enemies. So I agree. I agree with you. So much damage has been done. Cool, Craig. Just brother, I'll be curious to see what you think of that book. But I love The Night the DeFeos Died. It really puts a lot of things. Lori says here, and I want to say this generally to our audience here. I have really horrific nightmares, and I'm so afraid to deeply research the dark side in serial murders. You do, just like having field investigations. I spend a lot of time with this stuff. You have to ward. I have the candles going. I have the incense going when I'm in my room studying. Right, DA, you talked about it. You were diving into this stuff and had a really weird couple of days.
Yeah.
I think, and like kind of what she was just saying, in a way, I agree with that. Like if you're overly cautious, if you're like really, afraid of something, you're there. It's kind of like, in a way, it's almost weakening yourself at the same time. They see somebody that's easy to prey on. It's the same way. And then there's the other side where the overconfidence can be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're so bold, you're like, nothing can touch me. So there's the two things. I think if you're overconfident and if you're really not sure, both of those can open yourself up to a problem, because it's just like anything. You see something that's weak, that's who they go for. They go for the person that's going to be the weakest, the easiest to influence. And if you're already high on edge, like, oh, I don't want to encounter this, and all of a sudden, boom, they've got you.
I had an experience, and what Craig just said really touches too. I've told you this story, Joey. I don't know if I should tell the story now about the blue light thing.
You are absolutely welcome to, if you'd like to. It's a fascinating story, and because we're talking, let me just contextualize it. We don't know what these things are, so this could fall into the category, certainly. So have at it.
And something Craig said kind of led me to it. I came in from my studio one night, and I guess I should preface it real quick by saying I've had weird things happen to me my whole life, experiences, for lack of a better term. But I came in from my studio at about 3:00 in the morning, 2:30, and I was in my kitchen, and I saw a blue light in the dining room next to me. And I swear this is true. The most amazing thing that ever happened to me. But so I'm looking over, and I had two dogs at the time. One was an overweight beagle that was having hip problems, and I had an Australian Shepherd that was the dog who would sit and cry at the ceiling. He was like glued to my hip, right? So it was almost like the glow from a television, but I didn't have a TV in my house at that time. And I walk over, and in the corner of the room, this blue light is getting brighter and brighter. And all of a sudden there's this, it's a figure. I'd say it's a male figure because it was more angular in nature, but it was made like comprised of light and emanating light. And it was like that blue kind of Windows screen light, right? Like that shade of blue, like a brilliant blue. And I instantly dropped to my knees, and I'm a very questioning person. I question absolutely everything. And if one of you bring up something in this conversation that I don't know, I guarantee you the next time I talk to you, I would have researched it for 2 weeks straight, because that's just who I am. Right. And so I dropped to my knees, and I just had tears just streaming from my face. And the only way I could describe this was actually, and I stole this from Daniel Brinkley. Like, he wrote about a near-death experience that he had where I felt as if, say, the love a mother has for a child times a million put on a bucket and just poured over your head. Like, the amount of love was like, my hair stands up just thinking about it. But I was kind of stuck on my knees, and just tears just uncontrollably streaming down my face. And it starts telling me how we as humans are coming into what we've always meant to be. And it started, and what was weird is it felt, for lack of a better term, a download, but like it was like I was getting books of information, but was only able to comprehend the first sentence of each book. But there was volumes and volumes of books. But when it was talking about what we were coming into, what we were always meant to be, it mentioned, telepathy, levitating, healing, went on. And when it said healing, that's the only thing I said was, oh, can you heal my dog? Right. I didn't ask this thing who it was, where it was from, why I'm on my knees crying and at 3:00 in the morning on the floor uncontrollably. I said, can you heal my dog? And this thing said, you said to heal it. Right. So I'm sitting on my knees. My beagle comes up, and she's the kind of dog that so she was having hip problems. And if you know anything about beagles, if you can't get a beagle to go upstairs with peanut butter, there's a big problem because they're a very food oriented dog, right?
Right.
My other dog was very needy. So there's never been a time in their lives where I've had them that I could pet my beagle without my other dog being up my butt. And my beagle would never stand still. She'd just walk in circles so you can get the good spots. But anyway, I'm sitting there, my beagle comes up, does a little U-turn, parks her hips in between my legs. And I look down, and the same blue light that this thing was comprised of was coming out of my palms. And this thing goes on to tell me that it's all about the love, and just send her love. And it didn't ask me to take anything from it or, anything like that. It said everything you have is inside you, and it always has been. And it, and I don't think it was a I'm special thing. Like what I got was everybody has these abilities and these whatever. So I'm sitting there and quote unquote sending it love, right? And it's telling me that everything is, you have a choice in life. But it's all about the love. And so when you operate from a place of love, you vibrate at a higher frequency. And when you operate from a place of fear, which is what Craig triggered, when he was mentioning fear, that you vibrate at a lower frequency and are more susceptible to disease, to manipulation. And it expanded when it said fear. It mentioned anger, jealousy, all these other emotions are fear-based emotions. And that ties into, a lot of the addiction stuff, all of that. But anyway, so make a long story short, this experience ended. I got up off my knees. I was walking in my kitchen, like shaking my head, like I think I just had a mental breakdown. Like, what the F was that? Like, that did not happen. Oh my God. So I went to bed, and it didn't hit me until the next day at about noon when I realized that my beagle was running up and down the stairs like a puppy, and did so until the day she died. So I had to at least give it some credence, but there was a lot of other weird stuff that led up to that moment. But I don't know. I thought that story was kind of fitting for what we were talking about.
That is awesome. And our friend Sharon Heath says this is very touching. Quick commercial. Guys, if you want to pull in quantum physics and the problems of the modern world and the coolest female characters since Judy Blume was writing, look up Sharon Heath's Floor books, Floor trilogy, Fleur, Floor. Fleur, French for flower, I believe. Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, but brilliant books. I've reviewed all of them. Lori said it's like Reiki, and I think that it is like Reiki. And what I love, DA, about this is that you were empowered to do it. So the entity didn't do the healing. The entity said, you can do it. You have it. You have the power, which is I think, absolutely beautiful. And that it sounds very much, Craig, like the stories that Reverend Carter tells about his healing with his blood clot and all. I have one for you guys, and thank you so much for sharing that story. That is right on, because we all tend to focus on the dark side, and we want to talk about the light side of these entities as well. When I was living down in North Carolina, I met a man who had been in the military. And one night, after a riotous night of drinking, he got into a fight and he smacked his head on the pavement. And it created dozens of micro tumors, scars in his brain and all. And he was in really bad shape, and he had a family and all, and he was deteriorating. And one night, he had been to the doctor, and they said, "Look, these micro tumors, they're obviously inoperable. This is degenerative, and you're going to be in really tough shape." Well, he and several of his children have an experience. He thinks he sees an angel. The children think that they see aliens, ETs. A couple days later, he goes back to the doctor, and there's just minor scar tissue where all those micro tumors were. And this is a guy that had no reason to lie. He was just a straight up former, fisherman, very, very down to earth, knew the kind of work I did. And so he told me this story over a sandwich one day, but it was amazing to me. I always tell the story about the grandmother and the grandson, and one of them thought they saw a fairy and one of them saw an ET. So the Into the Outer Realms, which must be Tanya, Miss Tanya, joining us tonight from afar, from her undisclosed location, said that it depends, like in Mothman Prophecies, it depends on who's looking, what you see. So for the kids, ETs were more believable, handleable, if you will. So I think that's why some angels, if you can handle it, they come in that burst of light, or they came in the blue light to DA, because like they said, you can handle this. You own it.
Daniel Brinkley, who writes about near-death experiences, in one of his near-death experiences, he described a very similar being and experience that started the same way, but his culminated in like a life review. The similarities ended at the buckets of love thing, which but it was a blue light being and buckets of love, I guess. But for me, that really kind of messed me up, because I'm, again, like a researcher person. So I spent months online looking for answers to what this thing was, and found nothing about blue light beings at the time. And you also have that like, why me kind of thing, like I'm not worthy, you know.
Well, while you were telling your story, I looked it up too, and it said one site has it that seeing a blue angel represents, power, protection, faith, strength, and courage.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't, and so there was one of those. So it might have just been one, like you said, at that time you needed the strength.
Yeah. And contactees, abductees, it's typically blue light. That's what struck me. You probably told me that maybe 6 or 8 months ago now, I think, DA. And that was story,
probably a year,
the first
maybe
time. Maybe a year. Yeah. And that's immediately you're in your bed, and then suddenly there's this blue light, and then there's this being with blue light.
Oh no, that was a different story. This story that I just told, I was in my kitchen, but
but wasn't there the one? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but wasn't there the one with the TV? There was another.
That was different.
Yeah, but it was still a blue light being, though, right?
Yeah, and I had a friend about 6 months after have an experience with, I guess for lack of a better term, aliens that involved blue light spheres.
Yeah. Blue light spheres.
But that's a whole nother. I don't want to get into all that. It's another story.
No, but I mean, doesn't that tie into how we kind of started the show, where we talked about, what, and you guys kind of summed it up for me too. It's like, I feel like that they show up to you and appear as how you're going to accept it.
Yeah.
What's going to be, because it's, and it's the same thing. How you would describe it, like you said, you saw a figure, but it didn't come to you as this giant being with wings that folded out, and you felt the heavens come upon. No, it came to you and showed you what you needed, helped you in that time. But like I said, how do you know what it was? Was it in fact, one of the types of angels? Was it your guardian angel? Was it an archangel? That's
was it an interdimensional being? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is
to us would feel angelic.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
10,000 people see a light over a church, and 8,000 of them say it's Mary, Mother Mary, and 2,000 of them say it's a UFO. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a faith scale that determines. It's always been interesting to me, especially when I started studying shamanism, spirituality, drum journeying and all that kind of stuff, astral traveling. My spirit guides tend to come to me in the guises of things that I study and familiar with. Mm-hmm. So they're Native Americans, or they're an old Mesoamerican Bruja, because I happen to be studying that, and I so I do think, because if the message is important enough, they come to us in a way where we're not just going to freak out. Because the flip side of that is screen memories, right? The owls are not what they seem.
Mm-hmm. I do think, with that being said, though, I think is an important takeaway, especially when you're talking about demons and about operating from a place of love. Even in times of high stress and whatever, to try and keep your energy high, to not let those things in,
Yeah, because they're opportunists. Yeah. I will say that. And I talk about a lot in my book. Dark entities, you can call them anything you want. I believe they exist, and they are absolute opportunists. That's what they do. They're like con artists. They're like infiltrators of your fortress. They will identify weaknesses. They will pull your family apart.
This is something we definitely could have a part 2 on, because we didn't even really get into just from the beginnings, the falling, we didn't even touch on the big ones, the archangels, or Lucifer, Morning Star, the Light Bringer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had a little conversation about that after the last podcast, but it's a giant subject matter that could probably be talked about.
Yeah, because I've always I found a meme, and it's always kind of stuck with me. It kind of fits my personality. It says, "What if we got the translation wrong, and the reason that he was cast out of heaven was because he tried to help humanity?"
Right.
And that went against the wishes.
That's interesting.
And light is always looked at, like knowledge as light, and looked at as a good thing. And if Lucifer is the light bringer, he's the bringer of knowledge, then why is that bad?
The tree of knowledge of good and evil, was the do not touch, avoid. As I said,
he comes as the snake. He comes as the snake, and snake is Jaldabaoth, the son of Sophia, who's the goddess of wisdom, right? Look at poor Prometheus, brought humans fire and got his guts ripped out.
And here I thought I was the devil's advocate. Listen to you two.
I know.
You guys are doing the devil's work for me.
Well, this is where my overblown sense of social justice comes out. Isn't that really why our education system is such a wreck? Why it's this Henry Ford factory system education where people are there's new laws that are being passed about, let's not get too complex with our kids. Let's not give them complex problems. Let's just feed them some information so they can go be good little slaves and soldiers. And it's kind of a piece, right? The church doesn't want you any more knowledgeable. There's no gnosis. There are mediators, gatekeepers. That's why I'm doing the show on April 27th. They're everywhere. Why do I need, as a young kid, I was like, if God is everywhere, if God is all-knowing and omnipotent, why do I have to go in this scary little room made of wood and confess my sins to a guy who my dad was having whiskey with at the pub on Friday night? Who's he confessing his sins to? I smell a rat. A, God knows what I did. And B, God knows if I'm sorry or not. So I can go in, play along, do my Hail Marys, half-hearted, and go and do the same thing again. God's going to know. So this whole mediation thing becomes very interesting. And it goes back to DA's point about you got a little coaching, but you did the work healing your own dog. And I just think that that's beautiful. That's something that I can trust. And that's the way Reverend Carter tells it. They come, they say some stuff. They did help him with his blood clot, which was life-threatening. So that's a whole nother, not to put humans above dogs. I'm not trying to do that. But he was sort of in a crisis situation. I think this guy who had a family and had all these micro tumors, and probably within a couple of years was going to be unable to communicate or take care of his family or watch his kids grow up. I think when there's a crisis situation, they just need to act, right?
Yep.
But they're not asking for anything, right? So this whole, I have to make an offering, I have to sacrifice this goat, I have to sacrifice this. You want to talk about overlaps between, the religious sacrifice to God as much as what the so-called Satanists cut the heads off of chickens and this and that and the other.
Well, and some of the stuff, I was reading some stuff from like some Muslim authors, and I was trying to go down paths that I wasn't sure that you guys would go down, as far as like looking at it, angels from different religions.
Yeah.
And in some of these things, they were talking about Catholicism as a death cult. The sacrament, the body of Christ, blood, and you couldn't look at that and make a viable argument. I'm not saying it is, but
no, but what do? We examine texts as researchers. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So I would notice you have 200 people in the Catholic Church, and they're reciting the prayers and the liturgy and all of that from rote. They're not really thinking it. They're not feeling it. And then they're killing each other trying to get out of the parking lot to go get the good donuts at the bakery right after. So there is something to that. And there's a lot of beautiful things about the Catholic religion, but it lost its It lost its way.
I mean, it is the richest corporation in the history of the world, is it not?
Yeah.
There's that element to it, and then there's all the other books of the Bible that didn't make it in, the Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Enoch, which all of that stuff is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but we honestly could have a part 2 of this.
Oh, I think. Well, here Jessica's asked us to do a part 3. What about unanswered prayers, requests for help denied? Okay, Tanya and I have been talking about this a lot because, as you know, we've kind of gone through this huge life-changing thing. As much as we've done manifesting, positive thinking, The Secret, Joe Dispenza, blah, blah, blah. But then we really started talking about it. Okay. Craig, myself, and DA are all going for the same life-changing opportunity. We're all meditating. We're all manifesting. We're all visualizing. There was a key job that Tanya really wanted, and someone else got it. And I said to her, someone just got good news at the same exact time that you got bad news. So that becomes a really dangerous thing, all of that, like attraction, The Secret, manifesting, and critics of it. That's what really got me thinking. That's what they say. Why the hell is your request? Why the hell does that supersede my request?
But there's also something else that you talked about earlier, is perception. So, and what's the other saying? Be careful what you wish for. So, maybe you wish for this to be better.
Yeah.
But maybe the universe or God is providing it in a way that you didn't expect it. So in your instance, maybe it meant, the long route instead of the shortcut,
And you don't know. And I'm ashamed to say, when I needed my face the most, I haven't had it. So I'm processing that. I'm being honest with all of you.
Well, I've always taken it kind of like the analogy is like the sports thing. You've got a fan on either side, for each team. And as that buzzer beater shot is going up there, you have the one fan praying to God that the shot goes in, and you have the other fan praying that the shot misses.
Right.
So did God favor that? Or when you actually boil it down, and this is where it really gets into philosophical, and this really is uncomfortable for a lot of people. So did God favor team A over team B? Or did he, or was this in fact not of any consequential thing? And so there was no favoritism at all. And these prayers fell upon something that was of no, I hate to say of no interest, but it's one of those things. This is not something that, is going to be judged by me. And it's really hard.
And if you extrapolate what you just said to times of war, you have both sides of a war praying to their God that they survive. You could also make the question, how many people have died in the name of God, and that's some scary questions. Probably more than any other thing in the planet. More people have been killed in the name of God than gold.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lori says this, God doesn't care about the game, but you know what we're sort of, God does not play favors. But here's an interesting thing. What about the efficacy, the self-efficacy of the guy who's shooting the free throw? Did he do his 10,000 free throw shots? Did nerves get the best of him?
Or did he sacrifice a cat right before he went out onto the field?
Was there some chaos theory thing where some weird, did all the negativity don't get that shot? What's the home field advantage? The home field advantage is the quality of energy.
And Lori kind of said that God doesn't care about and I think that is the microcosm right there. It's like I said, we're running out of time. Like I said, that's why it's a whole nother subject here. I think that's one of those ones where we could have a whole nother show on this part. And it's not going to be a comfortable conversation for a lot of people. This is when I had that realization when I became really Gnostic, because I really started to question a lot of the stuff like I was raised, because I like to pull threads, and when things don't make sense, I'm not going to just blindly go along with it. I have to ask the why question. Why? And if you can't get an answer, we got to keep digging until you can piece it out.
Right. Well, my book opens, Parallels and Patterns opens when I'm 10 years old, and I'm in the confessional. I'm in Catholic school. It's one of my first confessions, and I'm really excited because I get to have the priest one-on-one. And the priest says, okay, so let's let's do this thing. Are you ready, Joseph? And I go, before I do my bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I got a question for you. I said, Adam and Eve and the dinosaurs, like, let's talk about that. And from the dark, I swear to God, 10 years old, I'm like, I got questions. And he goes, it's a matter of faith, Joseph. And they lost me. They lost me right there.
Yep.
I walked out of that booth, a change guy at 10 years old. And I have been questioning everything ever since. Because don't take it on faith. That's how you get bamboozled.
And weren't the original teachings that all of this is within us, and the church has become sort of an intermediate, a gatekeeper to those teachings. You know, like we have all these powers within us, but we're taught over the years that we don't, and we have to make sacrifices in the form of monetary sacrifice to the church to get good graces to go to heaven. To give your 20% monthly or weekly, whatever, however that goes.
Yeah, you're tithing. I just thought of something. You know, we could get pushed back on, and they would say the devil is operating through the three of you right now.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's exactly it. And that's what you kind of do. You run into that when it's when you run into that wall, and it's just, I don't blame people, because I'll even with my questioning, there's still times where, like, have I condemned myself for daring to quit? But that was because for so many years, from the time I can remember, I was part of the church. Yeah. And if you don't believe in this verbatim, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And that was one of the, like I said, there's so many ways we can split her off on it. I mean, this is good for a whole nother show.
Well, it is, because I think when it comes, Jessica says, love the direction this went in. I'm in on the next show. Good. Uncomfortable subject, but worth discussion. I think if we contextualize it, I think if we go to the text, if we do our work, then I think it's going to be okay. If God is omnipotent and omniscient, he already knows who won the game. That's right. Mm-hmm. He got his bed in early. Right, Charles. Jesus was a heretic. You were crucified when you were a rebel, when you were a heretic, when you were an enemy of the state. That's when you were crucified. Crucifixion was not something they did to everyone. So let's end this here. Mm-hmm. And I'll reach out to the guys. I got some openings in May before I go on hiatus in June. Maybe we can do a part 2. I still have lots of notes here. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of provocative questions, and the audience was very into it. I'm
game for doing the theology part, because that's
yeah. Lori, are you saying me too? You want in? Let me know.
I'm game for playing devil's advocate again.
I mean,
it's fun, isn't it?
It's hard. It's healthy, right?
Well, and just like you said, the uncomfortable conversations, I think that's the key. It's when you don't mock people, when you don't do this, and you actually just sit down and you have a conversation. It's not that I'm saying anybody that believes verbatim the Christian faith is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just when you actually take the time to look at it, there's things that I've asked in a seminary, when I was in seminary school for a year. I asked these questions. They could not answer them.
You were in seminary, dude?
Yeah, I went there for 1 year. And so I'm actually, a little secret that most people don't, I'm actually ordained. I actually can perform weddings.
Wow. When I made my confirmation, right, when I was 12, I really felt the Holy Spirit. And for 2 years, I was thinking seriously about becoming a priest, but I really like girls. And that was kind of it. I was like, I can't live that. Little did I know, though, that 25 years later, I lived my own version of the monastic life. Mm-hmm. I live very Spartan. I pretty much keep to myself. And sometimes I feel like St. Anthony wrestling with the devils in my cell. So that, I think, goes with Charles Smart said, destiny isn't a place, it's a journey. And I think we wind up where we're DA, you're a little bit of an ascetic, aren't you? A little bit of a monkish recluse a bit?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And back to the devil's advocate point, I do think in order to truly know a subject, you should be able to argue both sides of it. Whether you believe one side or another, you at least need to have that knowledge base to come at it from a place of knowledge, I guess, an informed opinion. You have to be able to argue both sides.
Absolutely, Angelina. That's exactly it.
So I'm really good at pissing off both sides of arguments. That's my forte. So
with Angelina's comment, Zachariah Sitchin, that's what set him on his path. He was a kid, he spoke Hebrew, and he was trying to say, hey, look, folks, these are mistranslations. Let me explain it. You want to talk about like a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid going, when you're talking about Nephilim, you're not talking about what you think you're talking about. And he said, okay, I can't do it within the walls. I'll go outside the walls. And I think that's why Into the Outer Realms is Into the Outer Realms. That's my expression for taking it outside the walls and doing it on my own. With the help of you guys, we really are getting short here on time, but they want a part 2 because we still have to talk about the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, we really haven't touched the theological side of it.
No, and this is semi-theological, but can they influence us? And what does that take? And what does it look like? And do angels influence us as well as what we call demons? So I want to thank my guests. I'm going to count on the fact that you're going to come back and we're going to pick this up.
Yeah, thanks.
Craig, what's going on your show in the next month or so? Do a plug.
Oh, next couple ones we got to next week is going to be we have his name's Roberto Villa. He has his own show called Fight Book MMA, but he started something I'd never seen before. They normally interview fighters like for this stuff, but he actually is an avid paranormal investigator. And so he's started taking these fighters with him on the investigations and interviewed them while doing the investigation.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like a combination of the two. So we're going to have him on. And then the following week, we're going to be having Janelle. She's from Bend, Oregon, and talking about a haunted theater. And they did an investigation in there. So,
cool.
So we'll be talking to them. So we got a couple of pretty good, cool shows coming up.
Yeah, too. And I have a bunch too, but guys, I'll tell you about them. I'm solo next week, talking about a case of a haunted Victorian in Southwest Pennsylvania. I was supposed to be talking about this live in Southwest Pennsylvania next week. That's not happening. So I'm going to do a show about it. Reverend Carter's coming up. For those of you with a more political bent, I have a guy named Terry Jernow who's won 7 Emmys. He's married to the actress Ann Archer, and he wrote a book, The Trial of George W. Bush. All of this talk about Putin and the ICC and war crimes. What if George W. Bush was abducted from the 17th hole of St. Andrews Golf Course in Scotland and brought to The Hague to stand trial for war crimes for the Iraq War? We're going to be talking about Terry about that.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, that's going to be very nice. I feel very honored to have him on. And Nicole Strickland, the queen of the Queen Mary. Oh, what do you got?
I still didn't get my beard oil.
Buy
Craig.
some beard oil from these guys right here. Outer Realms Bathworks. I'm
going to run the commercial real quick, and then we're going to say goodnight. The angel and the devil on the shoulder. See what we did there?
Yeah, I like. Yes, definitely support Joey and Tanya. Pick that up. I mean, yes, it helps us, but this is more of a plug for them, not for me. Well, so thank you for that commercial.
Oh yeah, Chris looks like Lenny Kravitz in that one, where the animated dudes come in.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if he's noticed that. So, audience, we are to the bitter end. Thank you all so much. Hold on, we got a few more comments, and then we're rolling out. Me and my homies. Rolling out. Excellent discussion. Thanks, Joey, Craig, and DA. Sick, those subjects are on fire. I'm not sure what that means. Sorry about that.
Means our subjects are doing are really interesting.
That is definitely paranormally funky. Yeah. One last thing. Oh my gosh. In the last minute, Manson. I almost was on tour as Manson this summer and not as Allen Ginsberg, but he's just too damn scary for people. But I could totally do Manson. So I've studied him for about 25 years. He spent more time in correctional facilities than out of facilities. His dream of being a musician was crushed. I don't think he was possessed by a devil. I think he was a deeply damaged guy who was, here's major controversy, a product of the system.
Yep.
And where
I
it
was just
in
going
the
to say, I think
1960s.
there's an element there. I just read this recently about how the CIA manipulated him and his people to do this stuff to be sort of a death to the hippie cult.
That is so
and I thought that was such an
controversial.
interesting approach
Yeah.
to that subject.
Yeah, I know there's a book, and Joe Rogan had the author on, and it's so incredibly controversial. I edit some counterterrorism, terrorism, counterintelligence journals. That whole field says that it's all BS, but of course, they would. They would say that. So maybe that's a future show, guys. We'll talk about Manson and what the heck was going on.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you guys
Yeah.
for having me again. It's
Yeah,
really been
that was
fun.
fun. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, guys. Join us next week on Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and the supernatural becomes the normal and the natural,
Good night.
and apparently the controversial.
That's right.
Peace.